don't know. I think you're joking.
You ready to party?
Oh.
Asylum Productions are a rural-based theatre company that make work for, with and about the community that we serve.
We've been working, not exclusively, but a lot in the last 15 years with a mix of community and professional theatre makers working together.
So we are a company that try to work outside of traditional forms of theatre and traditional theatre buildings.
So I suppose we like to be as diverse as we can in terms of the people who come to see our shows, but also the people who are involved in the making of them. Bringing together of a lot of those different things that we've done over the years, and always trying to find kind of just new and interesting ways of making theatre that excites us, that we don't get too complacent or lazy in what we do.
In doing so, we're trying to be useful. I'm driving past and noticed there was another pub closing in Callan, in the town where we're based, and kind of thinking, that's really sad. And then also, what would happen if we made a piece in a pub?
So, the local.
December 2020, Maeve asked me to do a Zoom call with her about a new project.
It was a place where people met, regardless of your social background, regardless of kind of, you know, you just went there. Like it was a third space that we kind of don't have, you know, a space that is different from home, that is different from work or school, just somewhere else. And I feel that we don't have it anymore. And I wanted to ask, what has happened to us? Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You know, what do we do now? Where do we meet and how do we have conversations? So that was the starting point, really. It was kind of grieving for these spaces in a way.
She told me all about the idea, and you know, they wanted to make a play set in a pub, and you know, talked about loads of kind of ideas that she had. And then
I actually started by wanting to make something set during Italian 90, because I have this real visceral memory of Italian 90 and the feeling of that, and the excitement of that, and the energy of it, and kind of wanting to harness that. At the same point, we didn't want to write something that was about soccer, because it wasn't about that for me. I didn't really care about the soccer. It was the social part. It was the excitement of it.
We had decided to get like a third writer in, which was a brilliant idea with brilliant Clare Monnelly. So then from January 2021, I think, or even maybe a couple of weeks later, we just kind of worked out a way of writing it together over Zoom.
We started to look around the early 90s and think about it as a time of major social change in Ireland. Actually, 1990, Mary Robinson's elected president. You know, 92, we have the X case. You know, we have Bishop Eamon Casey resigning. We've all this kind of stuff that started to happen really publicly that is new. And Sinead O'Connor tearing up the picture of the Pope, of course. And that was all part of kind of our research and really pinpointing 1992.
It was also sort of peak pub, you know, when it was sort of before the smoking ban and before, you know, when it was still socially acceptable to have 4 or 5 pints and still drive home after it.
And how we wrote it was, we actually decided on the plot. We knew each character very well at this point, and then we drew lots for who was writing which act. So for the first tranche, I wrote Act 1, passed the baton to Clare, and Clare wrote Act 2, and then she passed the baton on to Emma, who wrote Act 3. We did a test run in the Kilkenny Arts Festival 2022. It didn't really work, actually, but what was amazing about it was having spent a week with actors, that we could really see and feel how it could work if it was going to work.
We talked for so long about what it could mean and what it could represent and what it could be, but then at the end of the day, we're 3 writers, so you have to write story. So and we, like any human, just gets carried away with the story. So like the plot and became really important to us then.
The writers had another residency after this, and then we wrote the second tranche of characters.
Now we've all had a hand on every part of it.
Again, just mapped the space out, decided where each of the characters would be sitting, therefore where all the scenes would have to be, and it worked. It worked. Who knew? And that's where it all started. The main character in this story is the pub. So the pub is the central character, which is a really interesting thing because nothing interesting happens in a pub really.
You know, it's the place where you come to talk about all the things that have happened outside, you know.
So it's not one story, it's 20 stories encapsulated in this one lead character, if that makes sense.
And then we were all over the county looking for the right pub.
So that took about 6 months really of hunting, and in the end this was produced in partnership with Kilkenny Arts Festival. They actually suggested Sheridans in Ennisnag.
And it was quite late in the day actually that we found Sheridans.
They were looking for a venue, and I came up with this.
Went immediately to see it, met the owners, really enthusiastic.
This is very much to my heart, because when I see everything being acted, it plays a part of what I grew up with.
As soon as we sat down with Dónal and explained what we were at, he said, "Oh, that sounds great, yeah, I'd be up for that." And then every time we said, "Yeah, we can do that, yeah, we can do that, yeah." And there was this constant series of yeses.
It has never changed with the lounge. I built it in 1975.
The space is incredible. I mean, it was a no-brainer once we found it. It was exactly the right place, you know. So we didn't know what we wanted till we found it. So the first thing for me is how close to home it is. So I grew up maybe 2 miles away as a crow flies from this pub, and our phone number growing up was 1 digit different to the phone number at this pub. So all of that kind of thing. So it was really immediately felt like this is the local. You know, oh, this is really the local. And there was something really special about where it is. It's been in the same family for generations, at a crossroads, opposite a church with 2 bridges by the King's River. So there was also a real spiritual connection kind of coming from Callan. It's on the same river as Callan is. So we'd only just moved downriver a bit. Then the relationship with the pub owners was just really gorgeous. I mean, they really trusted us and they really handed over the space to us and let us in every day. And I don't think we could have imagined how amazing that would be.
But it wasn't written with this pub in mind, but it was definitely written with a lounge room in mind, and this was just absolutely perfect.
What we always wanted was that a single space that you could control, that you could direct everything in, and the fact that we had access to it for the entire rehearsal. So we were able to rehearse and make the show fit the space. And the idea very early on was that it would be an immersive piece with sort of multiple storylines happening at once.
It's made such a difference, you know, that you're so comfortable with the space and with the geography of it, that it's just like a second home now.
We had originally put out an open call for teenagers, for the teenage roles. I suppose thinking originally that they would be community cast, but we ended up with this bunch of a couple of really good teenagers who were just recent graduates, and I said, well, if they're graduates, then we have to treat them as professional actors. My producer said, well, we don't have the budget. We can't afford to hire, you know, his original budget was like, you can have whatever it was, 4 professional actors for 5 weeks. And I said, well, can I have 6 professional actors for 4 weeks, or could I have 8 professional actors for 2 weeks? So it was this constant juggling of resources and also trying to provide meaningful opportunities for young actors.
And a lot of the people really in it were genuinely local.
Like, I live right beside here, so my mum was like, oh, this would be great. So of course we went for it. And I went in and they just went, oh, great, like, oh, let's see what you can do. And they were like, oh, great, then we'd love to have you. And it was really shocking because I thought I was just going in for like, oh, yeah, so like, have you had any acting experience? And then they say like, oh, we'll call you back if we think that you're good enough. But like, it was just went in and you're in, like.
In the local, women take centre stage for sure. The women we were kind of laughing because I think the female characters were more well-rounded than the men. For once, I guess. This was a new thing. So yeah, led by character, definitely, yeah.
Caffrey would be, so she's from now, she's from present day. So I would be of this age, and she's coming back really to this place to really, I suppose, put to rest the ghosts of her past.
My character's name's Sinead Caffrey, but everyone calls her Caffrey. And she'd be one of the lads, so like growing up she would have been a tomboy, you know. She's wearing a dress tonight because it's Deb's night, but she says, you know, it's not very comfortable. Like, I just said I would, just for the night that's in it.
So I'm playing Sheila, who's a bit she's a bit of a stress head, to take a quote straight from the show. She comes across as a little bit of a bitch, but she has a lot going on, quite like myself.
My character's Susan, and she's one of the 6 teenagers going to the Debs. She's very interesting in the way that she responds to people. She has a lot of different ways of interacting with the people that she's around based on how she sees them and the responsibility she feels that she has towards them.
My character is a parish priest, and just coming out of where it was based in 1992, sort of in the late 80s and 90s, early 90s, it's where a lot of scandals were coming out for the priests and that, but still not. Priests in certain parishes still held the power, sort of thing. They still had power over the people, and the more older people at that time were still in fear of the priest, you know what I'm saying?
He's a man about the town, but he's also, I would say he's second in command to the most important person in the community, behind the priest.
And Chucky's part is more or less, he's at the pool table a lot. He's a very awkward and vulnerable person, a very vulnerable young lad in the 90s.
My character is Larry, and Larry is a truck driver, and he has a son called Wooly. And Larry is a good man. He's just likes his few drinks at the end of a night. He's away on the continent and in the UK quite a bit.
The character I play is Shawnee, and he owns a garage. And in Act 2, I come in wearing a dress.
Shawnee is a character, and that's when we wouldn't label him anything other than Shawnee who wears a dress. That was how he's described in the script. We heard a few different stories, one of them being apparently there was a man in the 1970s in Leitrim who worked for the council on the roads and used to wear a nurse's dress. He never used any labels on himself, he was just seen as a character, right? So we started to reflect on the characters and oddballs in the community, and even though the church was doing what it was doing, the law was doing what it was doing, society was doing what it was doing, and we look back and see that as a very repressed time, we can also look back and see how Irish people in Irish communities defend their own character and their own oddball, and they really accepted people in a certain way. That's not to say he wouldn't have had a hard time, that character, eventually or at another point. But in this show, we were like, no, he's going to be wearing a dress and nobody's going to comment on it.
Actually, you cannot do a play or a show based in 90s Ireland that doesn't have some reference to the church's position. And it was actually in the second week of rehearsal, I think, when I went back to Clare and Emma and Medb and said, we need that presence. And Sinead O'Connor had always been a sort of a part of the story for us. Even when we wrote the blurb a year and a half ago, there was a reference to 1992 and Sinead O'Connor ripping up the Pope and the seminal nature of that in our relationship to the church. So it always felt like Sinead O'Connor had to be in there. And sure, we were in the third week of rehearsal and Sinead died. And that was quite moving as well, because there would have been a lot of fairly serious Sinead O'Connor fans in the cast as well. There was a lot of resonance to that, A lot of our work over the years has been about sort of bringing together community performers with professional cast and crew, supporting, I suppose, the telling of, or the retelling of our own stories, as with Bridge Street, as with Big Chapel. And it's the very same with this show as well. So there was a lot of people who had worked with us before on shows. We call them LTIs, long-term inmates of Asylum.
It's very interesting because you learn so much from the professionals. You wouldn't think you would, but if you just stood back and watched how they put their characters across and how they deliver their lines and stuff like that, you would learn an awful lot from them. There's no such thing, we'll say, as amateurs and professionals when they're here. It's kind of, we're all a team.
Yeah.
We're all a team, so we all work together and help one another out. That's the lovely thing about it,
Everybody's just in this journey together, regardless of what you're doing and who you are. There's also no division between cast and crew either. So you'll see kind of a different kind of interaction between everybody than maybe in your average kind of production structure. And it's something that we're actually actively looking to develop a bit further. in how we divide up roles and who does what and how it happens as well.
You spend so much time in Dublin and everyone's kind of doing the same thing, but you come down here and you have people from like Tipperary, you know, Kilkenny, Cork, and it's just a mishmash of people, and then you just build your own little community. Like, it's so nice.
The really tricky part was getting all of the people in the room. Like, there was only 3 times during the rehearsal process where we had everybody in the room.
Not all actors were available all the time, so we had to work in a really kind of delicate, piecemeal kind of way.
The rehearsals are crazy. Like, you know, I've never been in a rehearsal room where like there's something going on there, something going on there, something going on there, and how did Dónal and Janice manage to kind of get a hold of it?
And I think Dónal and Janice really had to work with whoever was there in the room at that time and focus in on that.
We knew we'd rehearsed a scene, but we just not necessarily with the right people. So people were standing in for other people all the time so that we could block the scenes. But there came a point, like we were literally a week away, and we realised there was one scene that we had rehearsed a few times, but never with the actual 3 people who were in it. There was always somebody standing in. So there was a lot of that kind of juggling within the rehearsal room. So
finally, you know, ending up with a large, sweeping array of scenes that we had by the end.
Directing the show felt, a lot of times it felt like what I imagine it would feel like directing a movie, because everything's out of sequence.
So in a traditional script, you've got Act 1, Scene 1. In our script, you've got Zone 1, Act 1, Scene 1. So we had 3 zones. Actually, we had 5 zones. So Zone 1 is the story at the bar. So anything that happened at the bar was Zone 1. So one of my favourite characters, Shawnee, kind of lives at the bar in exile, shall we say, right at the end of the counter, and Noel, the owner of the bar, and Madon, they all kind of exist in Zone 1. Obviously, all the characters come to the bar at some point in the play as well, so they're coming and going. So that's quite a transient space. And then Zone 2 was where, yeah, a lot of the parents were based in Zone 2. So we would have had Mary, Mick and Larry, the 3 amigos sitting in one corner, and then another very unhappy couple, I guess, Paul and Martina. They were all in Zone 2, but the teenagers also played out quite a lot of their activities in Zone 2. Zone 3 then was the pool table, and to the right of the pool table, there was 2 banquettes. And obviously, Chucky, who was a character who kind of lived and minded the pool table, it was his universe. He was there, and then obviously the teenagers would come and go, playing pool or whatever. Zone 4 was outside the window, was Zone 4, and then Zone 5 was I guess if you want to think of it that way, our main protagonist was mostly Zone 5. So that was kind of, she was floating throughout the pub and remembering all of these people and all of the activities on that night. Anything that was kind of through the whole space. So sometimes that was just audio as well, but that was considered Zone 5.
We set it up from the start that the audience are safe, right? So like, first of all, thankfully they're in a pub. They know how to behave in a pub. They're not in a strange place. We haven't done anything weird as such to the space.
The play was the idea of kind of recreating the experience of a night in the pub, where there was multiple stories happening at once, and that as an audience member you would have a choice in what you listened to and what you heard, and the stories that you chose to follow.
Everybody is in the kind of uncomfortable position of what will I tune into, what will I listen to, and then they realise that they can make the choice themselves to listen to the whole thing or just to tune in like you would in real life, you know.
Because all the narratives were interlinked in some little way, in the hopes that you would get enough of the big picture that you as an audience could fill in the blanks yourself, because that's what you do in a pub. You hear a snatch of conversation and you fill in the blanks yourself.
But we didn't know what exactly was going to happen with the audience.
And the simplest solution to that whole issue was just simply telling the audience from the very beginning.
Good evening and welcome to the local.
This isn't like a conventional theatre show. You're not going to hear everything, and it's deliberately designed that way. So framing it in such a way with the announcement to the audience saying, look, imagine it like a night in a pub, and you can earwig on whatever conversation you wish that you wouldn't usually have that permission to do in a pub.
There was always these elements we wanted to include in it, and which was always going to come from Cindy, which is the movements kind of stuff and a lot more music in it, and so they decided on different like punctuation points for the end of scenes.
We like playing with form, we like playing with the structure of theatre, the structure of narrative and the structure of storytelling.
a glass smashes and everybody goes, "Way," you know, the ole ole. We're like, we have to be singing ole ole, like, you know, that has to be in there, and the Guinness dance is in there as well. And this play is not trying to be clever, and it's not trying to be ironic, and it's not trying to be anything other than it's a story, you know, a story about a pub. So it's so accessible, and then that's why the emotion really gets you when the different kind of things happen, because you're kind of caught unawares because it seems so simple, like, you know.
The play needed to get drunk over time, you know, because it needed to track in real time the course of an evening, so it needed to feel that way. So dance had to be dance and music had to take a large place in this.
Geraldine, who plays Ma Dunn, is my mother. The fact of knowing the customers, knowing what they're capable of, how far they can go. Ma gives a few of them a bit of advice that they need hearing and a little bit of chastising.
The first night it was put on here, as it works out, it was my mother's 27th anniversary. And the lady that played the part of my mother was so accurate. So everything that has happened that I've seen here, I would give it 100% because it was accurate. I grew up with it.
We fucking built this pub from the ground up. My son laid the foundations of this place. We have worked here so hard. This place was jumping. Now I tell you, not much went on here without me knowing about it.
The connection of the pub and the family to the community and the people in it, and that's still very much alive here in Sheridans today, and long may it continue.
I think a lot of people are really emotional at some parts. I could really see that it impacted them personally and that it was relatable in a lot of ways.
The audience response was so moving to me, you know, and I really felt like, especially the locals, anybody who's kind of grown up in rural Ireland could recognise any of those characters or identify with so much of it. There was some mysterious alchemy at play in this one. I don't know. It's because if we were at a pub on the crossroads by two bridges, you know, if there was some kind of magic dust sprinkled on it or whatever, but everybody was really invested in this in a different way and in each other. It was marvellous.
So the whole production was about that idea of let's bring a lot of people to the pub for 6 weeks and, you know, tell stories and have the crack.
And that's how you do it.